Okay, so maybe we can get started. Warm welcome to everybody. Nice to have you all here. My name is Lesley Kiernan and I'm Business Development Director here at StageZero Technologies. So we are AI data specialists based here in Helsinki, in Finland. And we seek to lead the conversation on valuable and ethical AI implementation in Europe, and to highlight the true value of AI within like a European context. So as part of that, we launched the first ever survey of its kind, looking at AI adoption in a European context. And we were able to establish a report about that you received before attending this evening's meeting, and that's what this evening's discussion is actually about. It's about this report. Really excited to be joined by several of the industry's leading experts on this topic. So before we get started, maybe we could do a quick introduction round. We can maybe start with you, Thomas, since we're here together.
Thank you, Lesley, and welcome everyone as well on my behalf. Maybe the most anticipated event of the year.
It is.
So I'm Thomas Forss. I'm the CEO and co-founder of StageZero. My own background is from academia and natural language processing within machine learning. Worked in 3 different companies within AI, and now focusing mostly on AI data and specifically then natural language processing.
Mm-hmm. Nice, thanks Thomas. And then we're joined also by Magnus Westerlund.
Yes, hello everyone, and I'm also looking forward to tonight, and I'm a principal lecturer at Arcada University of Applied Sciences in Helsinki, and I've been able to support this study, which I find quite interesting. The results have been quite interesting indeed.
Thanks, Magnus. Good to hear. And then we have also Markus Weber.
Mm-hmm. Hello, hi. I'm Markus Weber. I'm working for Wacom, like the pen company, and my role in Wacom is like to be the principal ink technologist, meaning like I'm leading like our development, especially in the area of like software and artificial intelligence related projects and technologies.
Nice, great. And again, thanks to you all for joining. I really appreciate it. I have a first question for you, Thomas, before we get into the nitty-gritty. What was the inspiration behind the survey? What were you seeking to do and why?
So I think the answer to that is basically we were looking around for information for a long time, especially for Europe, since that's sort of our main market. And we realized that there isn't really that much information available about AI adoption here. And then we started looking into how we could do that ourselves, and then we ended up where we are now. The data that's generally available is about like measuring statistics about the AI and machine learning in general. But what we were interested in doing was finding out like more than just the statistics, so more like extracting insights.
Nice. Yeah. And how did you do it? Could you explain a bit about the methodology? Were there any limitations?
So what we did was we started out by creating a survey that we asked these different people to fill in. And after we had created the survey, then we started reaching out to people within the field. Limitations, well, we don't really see any like limitations or bias in this, but it's hard to know since we haven't done that much extra research afterwards. However, there were some limitations in the size, sample size, for example, in how many people responded. So that's maybe the major limitation that we for next time probably gonna try to get more respondents.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. And when you were going through the results, was there anything that you had to leave out or omit in any way?
Yes. So what we left out was essentially well, it was the result of not having enough data to do as granular analysis as we would have wanted to. What I mean with that is that we would have wanted to do some comparisons, for example, between different industries in AI and machine learning, like, for example, more granular, like looking at, for example, telecommunications as a specific area and finding out there within that, like, how are they doing here? But sadly, we weren't able to get enough responses there to actually draw some conclusions. So we simply left those out.
Okay, not enough to make it really reliable.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What kinds of groups of people did you decide to include in the survey or exclude from the survey? And why did you choose Europe specifically? What was the kind of target audience?
Right. Yeah. So the target audience in this survey was twofold. So it's technologists, so people who are very technical within machine learning and AI, and also leaders in companies.
Okay.
And the way we approached this was, so we started out using LinkedIn as a way of finding these people to reach out to, and we limited it such that we only reached out to people that had at least 3 years of experience in the field or in their roles, and also like limiting it to relevant people, like, for example, lead data scientists, head of AI, senior data scientists, AI researchers, and so on. And then also some of the C-suites. So, for example, chief information officer, and roles like that. Yeah.
And was there a reason in particular that you wanted to look at European respondents rather than a global thing?
Yeah. So for us, Europe is like interesting because it's a little bit different to many other regions. But I think the one that we usually would compare it to is to the US. So US has like one kind of advantage, or like what makes it much easier to do AI in the US is that it's one big market with well, there's like two languages. Really, it's like English and Spanish. However, in Europe we have many small countries, and also like many smaller languages. So if you're talking about language AI, then you have, I guess in Europe you have more than 25 different languages.
Interesting. Yeah. I would like to go over now a couple of the key takeaways from the survey. So I'm going to share the screen. I have a couple of slides, just of, I would say, like maybe the key takeaways. There was a lot to go over in the report, as we don't have time tonight, unfortunately. But I think here we have a good overview of some of the key takeaways.
Right. Yeah. So for those that haven't looked that closely at the report yet, so we created it was more than 20 pages, and quite a lot of information in it. So here we have now taken out, is it like 5 or 6 slides?
I think so. Yeah.
That we found especially interesting. Okay. So what do we see here? So in this graph, you see the value that the different implementations by companies have been like evaluated on a scale from 1 to 5. And I think one of the very interesting things here, and why I wanted to talk about this one first, is that I think a lot of previous research or forecast based on implementations on AI have been telling us that most projects fail or will fail. However, we found something in this survey that seems to be showing that actually a lot of companies get value out of them. And if you look here to the right, you see that the average value that companies are reporting is actually quite high. So there's 6 different categories here. So better insights from analytics, internal process efficiencies, new capabilities, improved capabilities through features, cost saving, and then reduce risk. And all of these actually have a very high value given by the respondents, and that's, I would say, one of the things that, at least for me, was like a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, the value is high across the board.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we have a couple of other slides to go over. Can you help me out with this for a second? Sorry, it's not. Yeah, thanks. So there should be the information from chart number 7.
Yeah. So we had a few different key findings from the survey, and so if you look at AI and ML, all these algorithms need data to function, since they are statistical algorithms based on usually historical data. And when we asked the respondents about what their experiences with data is, it turns out that 92% of them have some issue with having enough data to train their algorithms.
Okay.
So that was also kind of surprising to me, that much. And what we saw here was also that it's not only smaller companies that have these issues, but also it's like across the board. There was a couple of bigger companies that said that they had enough data, but most of the bigger ones as well said that they have issues. So so it's not like only smaller ones.
Yeah, so a clear problem there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then moving to the next slide, we have some more information about developing solutions in regards to access to the right data.
Yeah, this is something I think is quite interesting, and it's something that I've noticed myself as well in my previous work positions, and it might be something that might be interesting to discuss as well with our experts. That there's a lot of ideas usually in companies on what you could do, but quite often you're limited by the data that's available.
Okay.
And yeah, so this perfectly matches with my experience. Okay,
yeah, and quite many who are actually struggling with that, it seems. Yes, so we're having some issues with sharing these, but we have now the next slide that should be visible in just a second, from chart 19, looking at how the organizational approach differs to implementing AI and ML.
Yeah, so when we did this research, we tried to find out, as I said, like specific insights about how especially high-performing companies would, or what are they sort of the things that they focus on that others don't. And while asking this, we found out that at least when it comes to organization, they are focusing more on certain things than others. And you can see here in this chart is the top row, those that say that they're ahead of their competitors. So they are more focused on hybrid and centralized organization styles, like basically how they make decisions and how they then spend their budgets.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then we have one final slide to show you about how people acquire the data that they need to train their models.
Yeah. And this is a very interesting slide. I think we will discuss it more as well with our experts here. But so there's a few different questions that we had to them, to the participants. So it's like, do they have already the data that they need? Which we saw that most don't. Okay, and then the question was, so if you don't, or like how do you acquire the data that you have? So what we see here is that a lot of them get the data either to customers, like that's most of them, like 3/4, or then create the data for themselves somehow. But also over half of them, of the high performers, are also working together with different data providers or like collaborating with someone to get that. And that's actually much higher than the rest of the followers or the ones that are not ahead of the competition.
So of all the respondents, it was the higher performers who use third parties the most for that. Okay.
Yeah, like it was more than twice as much as the others.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Were there any other differences between different groups of the respondents in how they answered?
Well, it was the same with synthetic data. So here on this chart, we saw that 1/4 of the ones that are ahead of the competition are using synthetic data in some way.
Okay, yeah.
And that's also much higher than the rest.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. And so finally, what are the main implications that we should take away from this report? What can we learn from them, and what recommendations do you make based on the report?
So I have a few things that I would maybe recommend. So first of all, AI development is very complicated. So it seems that companies that focus on their core, and that's usually building out the algorithms themselves, or doing some part of the core development, and then focusing on or like collaborating with other parties to get the rest of the things done. And that could be then either like a data partner, or it can be like using different types of platforms, like for example data platforms or MLOps platforms, so they don't have to, in a way, reinvent the wheel with every different thing. Then the other thing that we found here, which I think is crucial as well, is developing an AI strategy. There was like clear indications from the report that those that have a strategy and also dedicated budgets for machine learning and AI research and development have a higher chance of succeeding with their projects, or not necessarily higher chance, but they get more value out of them when they evaluate how much value they get out of the implementations.
All right.
And then we found that all of the high performers, when we measured, was or were spending and implementing or had already come quite far on machine learning operations, which is called MLOps, which is this term for maintaining and continuously improving your models, deploying and version control and so on for AI data.
Great.
Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. That sounds good. Thanks, Thomas. What's next? What are you going to do with this?
So I think we're going to dig a little bit more into the data and see what else we can find to publish about it. But other than that, I think at least from my own interest, I would like to see how this compares to other regions. So I would like to expand this to, for example, Asia. Asia is a little bit similar to Europe, in that it has a lot of different countries, a lot of different languages. Maybe we'll see this exact same thing there as here, but maybe not. And then I would like to also just get more respondents in, so that we can go more granular in and look at more specific segments and see what's within the segment, what's happening within the segments.
Yeah, that would be really interesting, actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, thanks, Thomas. We're going to move over to the panel discussion now, because based on what Thomas has said now, I would be interested to hear, when we look at the survey results in general, how do they align with what you, Magnus, and Markus experience in your daily lives, and potentially you too? Is this something that you recognize in your day-to-day work when you're at the office? And specifically, I saw one of the questions that said that a lot of the companies are expanding their budget next year for AI implementation. Is this something that you recognize in your day-to-day lives?
Markus, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. Yes, obviously we are expanding budget for these topics, especially also for sensitive areas like cybersecurity, because that's especially with like if you are dealing with data, this is a very sensitive topic because it can also like cause a lot of harm to your company financially. So there is a lot of invest now in cybersecurity on our side. Also like on topics like data collection and annotation. So yes, we're increasing the budget, but obviously the current financial situation and the crisis going on are affecting like the overall budget. So right. There is, no matter what, there is like cost sensitivity within management. So you have to really like explain yourself and educate your management, like why do you need this? What's the purpose? But actually topics like cybersecurity are very easy to argue. So I can see, as I said, like a lot of the things from the report, I can just like tick the boxes like, yes.
Good to hear it. Good to hear it. And when you're talking about topics to maybe influence management decision, what do you think those influencers are when companies are looking at expanding their budgets for AI implementation? What's in it for them?
Yeah, it really depends. In general, like with AI technology, you try to solve a problem that you could not solve before using like classical approaches. Especially we are now looking into the domain of pen and ink usage, and here especially for the education market. So we are trying to solve problems that are in education. So you have to look at the markets, the problems that are in these markets, and then try to identify what kind of technology can actually solve some of these problems. And then you carefully have to see like how technology can, as I said, like help people to improve something. Because like if you improve the usage, or in general like usability, the experience, then you also like increase value of your products. And as we are mainly a hardware company, we actually want to increase like the value of pen and ink usage. So by improving like the flows using AI technology, we can actually make the usage of the pen technology easier, which drives then revenue from hardware products. So it's really about like improving like the end-to-end experience and see how AI can contribute.
That's really interesting. Yeah, especially educational sounds like a worthy cause as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And Magnus, do you have some thoughts on this when it comes to companies raising their budgets? What have you seen on the ground?
I'm not sure if I can comment directly on the companies, but what I can comment perhaps more is that when we look at research, where research funding is kind of directed at the moment, is they have, I would say that particularly from the EU Commission, they have tried now to open up AI development within the health care sector and the social sciences, so the humanities. And I think this is a really important part that we don't only focus now on pure technology companies and pure technology in it for itself, but rather we really try to figure out now, what does this mean for example, for detecting or diagnosing certain diseases and so on. And here I think there's a lot of financing currently available for research within this area.
Interesting.
And so here, I think this is perhaps the biggest change I've seen perhaps within the research area.
Yeah, that sounds quite positive actually. Good to hear. Do you have some input on this one?
Yeah. So maybe like we talked to a lot of companies, so maybe some insight into what we saw about budgets and so. The survey was done like during the second half of last year. Essentially, we completed collecting data before this market situation or situation started going bad. What we saw was that at the end of Q4 this year, so like November, December, we saw like a real dip in interest from companies, like companies taking a step back and like saying that we will have to wait and see, basically cutting budgets and other things. But now at the start of the year, I think we've started seeing that those companies are actually moving forward again, because it really comes down to, I think, that they have to invest in AI or machine learning to improve their products and to develop new products, because it's actually the way I see it now is that the risk is greater if they don't invest than it is that if they invest right now.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. And do you think the customers are becoming aware of that risk more and more?
Yeah, I think they are sort of looking at what are others doing within their field, and then they are realizing that we can't wait. Like we have to invest, and I guess it always takes like a time after like a negative shock like there was in the market at the end of the year to react. But then technological like advances usually like the budget for those usually anyway open up after a while.
Yeah, good to hear. And we heard that one issue is once they have the budget, some of them, a large proportion of them, struggle to find ways to access high enough quality training data. So some of them have the money, they have the projects, they're ready to go, but they cannot find enough high quality training data. Is that something that you recognize also from the market and also from your daily work when you're doing your research, Magnus, or when you're at work, Markus? How do you handle accessing the right types of data? Is that an issue for you too?
Yes, obviously the challenging part is, first of all, if you collect data, the best case is that you have like really representative data, like coming best case like from the users you want to support. So and for this you always need to have like your legal framework aligned, so that you have like the user consent, that you have like full transparency what you're trying to achieve with the collected data. So all of these parts, then you have to gain the trust of your users that they are willing to share this data. And then once you have like this realistic data, you need like a standardized approach to annotate them, or like have at least like a framework where you can have like a cost-effective annotation. And that's a big challenging part, to have that really like high quality annotations as well. It's not only like having the data, but you also have to have meaningful data with good annotations that are required for your training. And that's like the challenging part, especially if you have like very complex data to annotate, like we have with our ink data. And if you want to annotate like the whole layout and like I think, then you really, it's a labor intensive work, and it's quite complex, and it costs a lot of manpower. So
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. How about you, Magnus?
I think I fully agree with this assessment as well, that we had one collaboration, for example, with a company, and it turned out that in order to annotate data, we had to take their most senior expert in for several months to do this work. And and that of course is not a very efficient way of dealing with machine learning in a general sense. And so I think that the annotation process is something that the companies and as well I think universities are doing research really need to perhaps rethink even that how we do this and perhaps as well in the proposals that we do within research we should target more the idea of how to really create new data sets. Having said that, I mean there are different new directions coming from this, and one of course is the self-supervised machine learning methods that are kind of coming up, and this is an interesting development that we have seen now recently with the large language models where we suddenly have extreme amounts of data, right? Data is abundant in that sense, as long as we can tell, as long as the machine learning algorithm can train itself, so to say. And that we don't have to provide it with annotations for every single sample. But in most cases, we don't have this, at least not yet. We don't have this possibility, perhaps. But I think, in a general sense, that the way that we deal with annotations is perhaps not sufficiently developed. It's something we need to work on.
Yeah. There seem to be a few different challenges around the data itself that were coming up. Like I think almost a quarter were using synthetic data to get around different project blockers. They were looking at synthetic data and actively using synthetic data. Markus, I'm curious to hear how it goes in Wacom. Are you using synthetic data sometimes? Is it something you've researched? What are your thoughts on synthetic data?
Yeah, actually, that's like I think there was like a running joke within the engineering team, the ML engineering team. Like every time when we're like having a meeting, like we were waiting for data, and it was always like the coming on like, oh, we need more data, and I looked for like existing data sets, brought some more data sets, but yeah, this is not enough data, and it's not properly labeled, and so forth. And at some point, the team started to look into synthetic data because we had like a few small data sets. So they said we started with something what we called like the ransom node method. So like taking like parts from the existing data and putting them together like with different layouts, which we learned then from other data, because it was really just hard to get the data because we were working with a partner, an external partner, and there was always like the contractual negotiation, like when to get data. So it was painful. At some point, we decided also to start our own data collection for certain parts. So as I said, like that's why we started, because we were desperate to look into synthetic data, and also especially in the in handwriting mission, it's kind of like hard, because then you start to mix like handwriting from like different users. And we also looked into methods where you can train like a generative network to produce handwriting based on text input, but still then you kind of like have like not the same quality of data, especially if we think of our pen sensors with like the pressure, with like the pen angle. So it's really hard to reproduce like good handwriting synthetic data. So we were left with like this ransom node approach.
Oh, that's really interesting, actually. Yeah, really interesting. How's it going for cases like in IoT or for edge computing cases, Magnus? Are people using synthetic data in those kinds of situations?
That's a very good question, and to some degree, I think there's a long lineage here, a long history of using synthetic data. So, for example, when it comes to network data, so the network traffic, we have been simulating data within this area, and also when we look more at sensor data, sensors that kind of work in a certain repeatable fashion, we can then define the changes in data through statistical means. So here as well, we see that there's quite a long history of using this, and quite many companies are thinking of how to go forward with this. particularly in the sense here of trying to understand how to be able to be mindful of privacy issues. Of course, I mean, if we, for example, set a camera within a video camera within the home, do we really want to send data out from that video camera or that microphone somewhere? So here is I think the possibilities are very good here to use synthetic data perhaps. But then as well, I think what we have not seen yet is where we have multimodal data. So meaning that we have many different types of sensors describing the same phenomena. Here I have not seen many examples of synthetic data where you would be able to use it properly. So, for example, Tesla has been discussing, or Carpathy was discussing this, that do we really need synthetic data when it comes to cars, for example? And his opinion was no. We have enough data from the sensors that we want to use. We don't need to manufacture more data. But I think that is a very particular use case that they're discussing there.
That's really interesting. I was unaware of that. And I wonder, Thomas, since you're our resident training data expert, are there some other cases where you've seen that synthetic data is not being exploited, and why not?
So yeah, we've seen a lot of different cases, both from computer vision and also from the NLP side. And I think actually most areas use some form of synthetic data now. So I wouldn't say that there is any that we run across that haven't. However, you can see like a clear difference in which use cases have used more, like which areas use more synthetic data. And I would say that the speech and audio side is the one that uses the least synthetic data. And that's probably, I would think that it's because of like a lack of technological readiness for creating like good enough data to be used as synthetic data. So you can, I've talked to a few companies that use data and then sort of enhance or change it for their purposes to improve algorithms in a similar way to how Markus explained that they made these ransom notes. So doing something similar for speech. But I haven't heard of anyone that would, as of yet, at least train on, like, for example, a synthetic voice only to do something later.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Fair enough. And there were also some questions around privacy compliance and using synthetic data around privacy compliance. And indeed, it seems that a lot of our respondents were concerned about privacy regulation. Actually, a large percentage of them cited specifically privacy concerns as being one of their like biggest concerns. And at that part in the report, Magnus, you mentioned that was quite surprising to you to hear that these people are concerned about privacy. And I'm wondering, why was that surprising to you? Could you please elaborate a little bit on your conclusion there?
Well, first of all, perhaps because personal data is very specific. It's not necessarily so that every company that we think of would even have the need to use data that is directly or indirectly then linked to an individual. So it's fairly easy nowadays to de-link or decouple, so to say, the data from its users, so that you cannot derive who has done what. So in that sense, I think the mature companies would know how to do this, and in that sense, the privacy shouldn't really be that huge. But of course, we have now. I don't know exactly the sample where it comes from, the data sample, the companies that responded to this, then and what their background is. But if they're in regular industry, for example, this should not be really a major issue.
Okay.
But then, of course, on the other hand, maybe they're also thinking about other types of regulations, and we have been seeing a lot of discussion around the upcoming or proposed upcoming AI Act, for example, and here is something that may be above their heads, that what they were really thinking about, that how how will our case change if we get a new legislation now?
Indeed, maybe that's concerning for them. And Thomas, because StageZero has been dealing a lot with issues concerning GDPR and so on, we've been looking at a lot of different, many different legislations from different geographies. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, in short, I would hope that like the world could move towards having one joint regulation over time. I think it's like over short term, it's probably impossible, but we start seeing, for example, in the US now, regulations for privacy appearing in each state. So having 50 different regulations in the US, and okay, then we have one in Europe, but if the trend holds for different areas, then we're going to end up with like 100 different regulations across the globe. And at least smaller companies don't have the resources to make sure that they are following every one of those. So I think it's sort of going to be stifling competition if we are having that many regulations. That's sort of like a bad outcome of it.
Yeah. I'm just mindful of the time, but I do have one question that I'm curious to ask Markus, because obviously Wacom is an international company, so you're probably dealing with a lot of legislation, from different places. Is there a possibility, there has been some talk that at some point we're going to end up with tens of different legislations and it's going to be very difficult to handle them. Is there a possibility that this would happen? And how would you handle that?
Yes, it is painful, and the way how we handle this, we do have obviously our internal legal team, and the internal legal team is then working with local partners. So there are local law firms who are actually specialized in data privacy for the different regions. So you end up like having your legal team like working with local partners to support with this matter. But it's again like a budget reason, because like these partners and the specialists in the local, they are expensive.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
And so it's the only way to handle this. You cannot have like one expert within the company for all the regions. So you have to work with external partners and law firms who are specialized in this region. So no problem that you can't solve with money.
Okay. Good. And so we have 3 minutes left, so we're really tight on time. But I have one question, because you're all from academic backgrounds. And Magnus, you're actively working as a researcher now. What, in your opinions, what role could or should European universities have in developing AI implementation in the region? Quick fire round. Thomas.
I think they stand, or like they should be one of the driving factors of legislation and how we use AI. So like trustworthy AI and that the GDPR and AI acts are actually applicable to concrete scenarios, because I think that there's a risk if there's only lawyers from in the EU drafting these legislations that they can't really be applied in practice in certain cases.
Yeah. Fair enough. Magnus, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I fully agree with this. And this is what we've been working on quite intensely the last years as well, to do assessments of different high-profile cases. We launched an initiative called Sea Inspection that includes people from industry and academia in particular, and trying to figure out what does it mean in practice really mean to break down a solution and see whether or not it's trustworthy. Here, following then the Commission's own work on defining what trustworthiness means. So this is.
Yeah.
this is one of the core things I think we need to do, and the second part is, of course, to educate new people as well.
Yeah.
Not only engineers but also business people. I think we needs to have this ability of understanding what AI really means. And this is quite different from previously. I mean, how much do you need to know? This is the question, I think, for most business people that they need to answer themselves.
Yeah, and maybe a tough one. And Markus, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. Actually, we do work a lot with with research. I actually work with my former research institute a lot in projects, and also now I have several master theses where I have students doing her master thesis at Wacom. And here I get a lot of exchange with external partners, because I also want to have this knowledge transfer coming from research, from talking to experts and bringing this knowledge within the company. And you can't have the experts on all topics, so you're trying to pick the right university for a certain topic and then transfer all their knowledge to the company. And this is on the one side to also support from externality to external partners to educate management, also educate on a higher level even shareholders and stuff like this, because it's important to understand the impact AI solutions can have, but also how hard they are to build and what you need for this. Because it's a very complex topic, and you need support to explain this to all the shareholders.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thanks, everyone, for your insights. So sadly, we're out of time already. That went really, really quickly. But thanks very much for all your insights. It was great having you here. Exciting discussions. Hope to have you back next time then for the next report, maybe in Europe, or maybe, as you suggested, Thomas, extending to Asia. Also very, very interesting market indeed. Yeah. Thanks everyone who joined us, and again thank you Magnus and Markus for joining us as well. Much appreciated. Have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.